Mel Kiper gives his grades for the Chicago Bears draft and all of the drafts in general. Kind of just an interesting way of grading it, if you ask me. And the Chicago Bears have some interesting undrafted free agent signings, one of which they made a pretty big commitment to for an undrafted free agent. Got to talk about all that and more in today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Now, if you are new to the channel, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel, the only channel talk Chicago sports, how Chicago talk. Every one of you guys that hits like on the video, it helps the video. Every one of you that hits subscribe on the channel, it helps the channel. Let's get into this. Mel Kiper grading all the teams in the NFL in his latest article and coming out with a interesting grade for the Chicago Bears. Now, the grade is a B. It is not a bad grade for the Bears, but I think some of the criteria that Mel is going off to give the Bears a B is a little bit interesting to me. But I thought Mel Kiper did a good job of kind of breaking this down. Talked about the Bears coming into round one with a chance to change the trajectory of this franchise. Of course, we know they end up picking number one on the list in Caleb Williams, and then at number 9 they end up going Rome Odunze. And here's what Mel had to say about it. Said, Williams, the number one player on my big board, is an elite talent who will be surrounded by a great group of playmakers, which now includes wideout Rome Odunze, who finished number 4 on my big board. As I wrote Thursday night, he's going to be able to hit the ground running in Chicago. This is a fantastic start to the draft for Ryan Poles. Mel then goes on to say that Chicago didn't have the capital to fully help both its offense and defense in this draft, and as a result of the other side of the ball needs some work. With Williams leading the way, though, the offense will be incredibly fun to watch. I love the fact that he also goes on in the article to talk about, Kieran Amagaji at 75, who is a project offensive tackle coming off a partially torn quad, but he likes the physical traits, thinks that they're interesting, but he does not love the Bears taking Torrey Taylor 122nd in the draft, even though he was the best at his position, and does like the fact that they go back in and get Austin Booker. But here's my thing. He kind of talks about, they didn't have the capital to fully fix all of their issues. And I think that that's a skewed way of looking at the draft. I don't think you go into the draft to fix all of your issues in one draft. And I think Ryan Poles understands that. He's talked about that multiple times, that, we go into every draft, we go into every situation and try to fix as much as we possibly can, with the understanding of, listen, some of these guys aren't going to hit. Some of these guys aren't going to pan out. Some of these guys are just going to be depth pieces. Some of these guys aren't going to be the future of your team. And I think that's where a lot of times people get caught up, where they look at every player round 1 through round 7 and they go, there's a superstar there. That's your guy. And yeah, there's going to be some players out of every draft that absolutely hit late, right? There's going to be some dude in the 6th round that turns into a stud. There's going to be a Puka Nacua. There's going to be a Tyreek Hill. There's going to be, you know what I'm saying, where there's always that guy that you end up finding, that diamond in the rough. And yes, you hope that you end up finding those guys. But a lot of times going into this draft, once you're out of the first, I'd say 3 rounds, I'm kind of now looking at, all right, how do we build onto this team and get legitimate starters that can be role players, or at best, how do we get some depth pieces, especially when you're looking at defensive line, edge rushers, linebackers, right? How do we get guys that can step in and give you good production? And Ryan Poles has done a pretty good job of evaluating that level of talent and finding where he needs to go with that. And I think that's why, to me, this is an interesting way of looking at it, because it's almost like Mel is saying that you have to get every pick right. You have to address every single need, and you have to find starters at every position for all of the holes that you have. Now, y'all saw my reaction to Torrey Taylor being drafted 122nd in the 4th round. I was a little stunned that we went punter ourselves, but I do understand the need. I'm not knocking the Bears for that. I do understand that, listen, we can go with our 5th best available guy, or we can go with the best punter in the game. Now, Am I one that would waste the draft pick on a punter? No, I'm not. But Ryan Poles saw a need. That is a need. That is a major need for the Bears. Saw how important the field position can be for a young quarterback and said, I'm going to go get a punter. I don't think that this is a bad move. I don't think that this is a negative move in any way. I guess if you're sitting here ranking teams, which this is kind of doing, right? Ranking who you feel had the best draft and had the worst draft, blah, blah, blah. Right. If you're knocking the Bears for taking a position of need while sitting there looking at some of the guys who I thought, right, could be nice pieces in the draft for you to go after and add to your team. I thought Austin Booker could have been a 4th round pick for you and he was on the board. Guess what? You go out and you get him in the 5th round. I'm fine. My biggest question is Caleb Williams going to be good? Is Rome Odunze going to be good? And is Kieran Amagaji a starter? If you knock those 3 pieces out of the park, the other 2 are what they are. Not to say that you want to miss, not to say that you don't want to hit on every pick, but I think you've got a good chance to hit on these 2 because 1, you've got the best guy at his position. You know he's going to be a starter. I'll tell you this right now. There's some pink slips being handed out in that punting room immediately. And so Torrey Taylor coming in here, having a big leg, being able to have accuracy, I don't think that that's a negative on this Bears draft. And then you look at Austin Booker, you trade back in the 5th round, give up a 4th round pick next year for him. He's a guy that came out in 500 snaps and was able to get, or less than 500 snaps, I should say, and was able to get 9 sacks. I'm fine with that. I'm good. You know what I mean? I'm taking a chance on a guy that in limited time showed massive production. And so for me, I would look at this more as an A-style draft. Now we'll break down more of what we feel the grade on this draft should be on tonight's episode of The Daily Show. So tune in with us at 6 on that as well. But I don't know, man. Like, not to say that Mel gave us a bad grade, but I feel like you're not grading based on what the Bears actually did. You're grading on what the Bears want. Or what you wanted the Bears to do, I should say. And I don't think that that's a fair way to assess it. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Now let's keep this thing moving along, man, because we got some undrafted free agents that Chicago Bears went out and signed, and one of which they committed some interesting money to. Not to say that it's ridiculous money, not to say that the Bears, went there and spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a guy, but we'll get to that, right? I thought that it was, in my book, interesting, right? But the first guy that they end up signing, Austin Reed, backup quarterback candidate. I mean, I think we know this at this point, that all the guys in this draft not named Caleb Williams are backup quarterback candidates. This is a guy that just makes your quarterback room a little bit more competitive. He ends up completing at Western Kentucky 3,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 289 of his 470 289 for 470 passing, 10 games with multiple touchdown passes thrown. I like this. Make the QB room competitive. Not to say that you've got to sit here and there's any expectation that anybody is going to take Caleb Williams' job at the quarterback position. That would just be dumb to think at this point, right? He's your start. You took him number 1 overall. He's your starting quarterback. But I do find it interesting that you go out and you get a guy who seemed to be very accurate, had a good touchdown to interception ratio, is going to be able to come in and bring some competition. You're going to give him some eyes on his game as well. Hopefully he's able to continue his time in the NFL through some of the training camp. Maybe he makes it the preseason snaps that he gets, but he's also competing with a guy like Tyson Bagent, who the Chicago Bears had a lot of belief in last season, and I don't expect them to not have a lot of belief in this season. I think this is a solid name to just add to that quarterback room and try and get as much out of it as you can, and hope that you find another diamond in the rough or another gem that somebody sees and you can say, hey, listen, yeah, we got this guy on the team. How about we trade him to you? I would expect you to have one vet by the end of the year. I don't know if it's going to be a Nathan Peterman or whoever that is, but usually there's one vet that ends up sticking around on the roster. If I had to pick between the 3 quarterbacks that are going to be on this roster, I would assume that Austin Reed is not going to be a part of those guys. But I wish him nothing but the best. I thought this next guy, though, is very, very interesting. Reddy Stewart out of Troy, played for the Troy Trojans in college. And I mean, listen, the numbers are pretty good, but you don't sit there and go, oh my God, this dude's amazing, until you sit down and watch the tape, which is why it took me so long to actually get to making this video today, because I did have to take some time to actually look up some of these guys and do a little bit of in-depth digging on their game. But 7 interceptions in college, 16 pass breakups over the last 2 years. But the Chicago Bears seem to have some kind of belief that he's at least going to be on the roster, because he gets a signing bonus of $12.5K. And I know what you're thinking. Listen, okay, $12,000. Like the Bears are worried about $12,000. I'm not sitting here telling you that the Chicago Bears are worried about spending $12,000. What I am telling you, though, is this is the second most a undrafted free agent has ever gotten, behind only Tyson Bagent last year, which means this is a legitimate commitment for the Chicago Bears. They believe financially on some level that this young man can play. And when you watch the tape, you kind of see why they feel that way. I mean, I'm talking about a guy that, yeah, when you're talking about size, I guess maybe you're not sitting there beating your chest for him, right? And I want to pull up his measurables here. I should have had this one ready. My fault, guys. But the one thing that, and while I'm getting that pulled up, the one thing for me that I thought really stood out about his game was how he broke on the ball, how he attacked. Didn't allow a lot of guys to push him around, even though a little bit undersized, as I get the draft profile up here. So I guess yes and no, right? 5'11" for this young man. 178 pounds, but last season alone, 4 interceptions, 38 solo tackles. I thought that he did a good job getting his hands involved in everything that was thrown his way when I looked up his tape. I thought that, he did a really good job of not allowing receivers to have a ton of breathing room. I thought he broke on the football really well. And, listen, when I looked at his game, it was one of those, like, I can see why this guy went undrafted being a part of the Troy Trojans, but also, if you're just looking for the intangibles, if you're just looking for a guy who, what's the right word? If you're just looking for a guy who plays the game the right way, this seemed to me like a guy that I could have seen get drafted in the 5th or 6th or 7th round of the NFL draft, because you look at how much he allowed guys to play, how he played his game, how he allowed wide receivers to move, and he was kind of like a real glue on the wide receivers, like made their lives difficult. Thought he had really good speed, thought he had excellent break, thought he had excellent footwork in his back pedal. I thought he broke on the football really well, which is why he was able to come away with a lot of those interceptions. I thought he was a sure tackler as well. When guys got the football, you were able to bring him down. Of course, he's going to struggle against some of those bigger 6'3", 6'4" receivers, right? But even versus a lot of those guys, you kind of looked at him and just were like, all right, but he's still holding his own there. Yeah, they're getting theirs, but he's also getting his right back. And so I thought this was a good signing for the Bears. Be on the lookout for him to possibly end up making the Chicago Bears roster when we finally get through everything, especially with a financial commitment. Not to say, again, that the $12.5K is going to break the Chicago Bears, that they're going to have to commit to this guy. But I thought that it was interesting to see that they did, because it at least shows a belief financially in what this young man can do. And I like that. I like being able to see that from the Bears, and I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do on the field. Let me know if you guys have seen any of his tape, if you've watched any of his tape, what your thoughts are on this young man. Do you feel like he could be somebody that the Bears actually add to their team? By the way, he was 2nd highest in career PFF grade among any cornerbacks in his class. Like I'm saying, He's got really, really freaking good awareness, always knows where he is on the field. I mean, like 5'11", 176, you're going to sit there and look at this guy and say he's got to add some weight, but the skills are there. And if the skills are there, can they be developed out of them? I hope the Bears found a gem with this one. This might be their gem of the draft. Some of the other guys that the Bears went out there and added in free agency, undrafted free agency, I should say: Theo Benedict, offensive lineman, or Benedette, offensive lineman out of the University of British Columbia; Keith Randall, defensive tackle out of Illinois; Jamari Croma, defensive end out of James Madison, somebody to keep an eye on, especially with the Bears defensive end, taking a defensive end in the 5th round. you know there's going to be some competition at that position. Carl Jones on that list, linebacker out of UCLA. Brendan Bates, tight end out of Kentucky. Brendan Bates, a interesting tight end. He's somebody who I actually did a little bit of viewing on for a late round pick. I thought that he was somebody that might have ended up getting drafted as well if the Bears wanted to get back into this. Love seeing them be able to get him as an undrafted free agent. He's somebody to keep an eye out for. Again, I keep saying this, Gerald Everett's 1 year of commitment that the Bears have made to him is not the end of the world. I don't view it as the end of the world. I don't view it as the Bears are tied to this guy long term. I would not be surprised if Brendan Bates is a name that we hear about also making this roster. I think that he's got a lot of really good intangibles. I think he's got good hands, solid feet, big body. Yeah, I mean, all the things you want to see out of a tight end. He was an interesting one for me. And then they finish it off, of course, with Leon Jones out of Arkansas State. Those are the other free agents that the Chicago Bears went out and signed this offseason. Let me know how you guys feel about any of the names on this list. By the way, just to let you guys know a little bit about Brendan Bates, did not end up getting crazy yards last season at all, and has not had, I guess, has not had a illustrious college career, but when you see him actually get utilized, just a big boy. 6'5", 251, monster of a guy over the middle. Yeah, I mean, only a couple of career touchdowns, but I think he's got a good body. I think he's got some solid speed, and he's somebody interesting, at least to me. Not a lot of he's a guy who here's a guy. Is that how Mel Kiper did? Here's a guy. He's a guy to me who when you look at, again, very limited tape, you see very high production every time they go to him. And that's what makes him interesting to me, because just like Austin Booker, now they used him a lot more, but when you look at Austin Booker, he did not get normal college usage. And he was highly productive every time somebody threw the ball or somebody gave him an opportunity to be. That's kind of what I see from Brendan Bates. But let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. I'll be down to talk with you as well. As always, it's your boy Pat, the designer, back at it again. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. As always, y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down, one love. Let me know which undrafted free agent you think makes this team. Peace.